Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. Looking back, I realized that I shouldn't have come to my wife's Christmas party at work. I've been suffering from a stomach infection for the last 3 days. I'm just starting to get over it. Because of this, I missed 2 days of work. I can't remember the last time this happened. I'm shearing sheep, if you're interested. Jeannie has worked at her current company for 3 years, but this will be the first Christmas party I attend, as I have been busy with work for the last 2 years. I assumed, based on her disappointment over the previous 2 years, that she would really like me to meet with her colleagues, although now that she thinks about it, she did not insist too much on my visiting this year, but being a very attentive husband, I decided that I would squeeze my buttocks, take myself in your hands, and together we will enter the doors of the chic hotel where the event is being held. She only managed to introduce me to a couple of people before I was overcome by an all-too-familiar, irresistible desire rumbling in my intestines. Damn. The search for a toilet and a free stall turned from good intelligence to urgent in an instant. In record time, I reached the right place, and I breathe a sigh of relief when gravity and pressure do their job. I'm just drying off when 2 guys come in. I can tell that they use a urinal. They were talking when they came in. It doesn't bother them to take a leak at all, but what I heard slows me down like hell. In fact, it makes me completely freeze. Moreover, my blood is ice in my veins. Damn, dude. She looks beautiful in that red dress. Yes, one can understand why Clive uses it. Oh, come on. It's just office gossip. Bullshit. I heard it from Sue, his secretary. She saw them walking into that hotel around the corner after work a couple of weeks ago. According to her, he spends a couple of hours at lunch about twice a week, and whenever he is absent, she notices that the fool is also not sitting at his table at this time. Damn, he works fast. How long has he been here? A month? Yeah, well, he's a nice, talking bastard and a little younger than her. Yes, and she's married. But I'll tell you what, they wouldn't want old man Higgins to catch them. He's tough as nails in this kind of shit. Do you remember last year when he caught those 2 kissing under the mistletoe? I almost tore their ass off right there. The sound of washing hands accompanies the last exchange. No matter what else they say, it is impossible to make out, because their voices fade away as they leave. Or maybe it's just the roar in my ears drowning them out. The door opens and closes. The silence echoes. All I can hear is the beating of my own heart. Fast. It's too fast. What's bothering you about their conversation? Jeannie, we've been married for 8 years. Looks absolutely stunning in the new red dress she bought for tonight's party, and looking back, I realize that she's been a little quieter than usual for the last month or so. Overcome by a sudden sense of urgency, I finish tidying myself up in a hurry. I need to go back to the ballroom to see how many more women are wearing red dresses. There must be at least one more. It can't be that they were talking about my Jeannie. After I finish washing, I re-enter the ballroom. The heart is somewhere south of my wandering intestines, and look around. For a brief flash, relief. The color red seems to be very popular this year. There should be at least 6 to 8 red evening dresses in the room. But then I do a second, slower scan of the partygoers. Only a couple of ladies can be called hot, and only Jeannie is standing next to the table allocated to us with a younger guy. He's wearing the same tuxedo as me. However, the similarities end there. While I look like a gorilla buttoned up in a suit and strategically shaved, the guy looks like he was born in it. I approach them, noticing that they are standing very close to each other. There are several other people nearby, but none of them are close enough to engage in conversation with them. In the blink of an eye, my spidery feelings shift from anxiety to blatant awareness. When she notices me approaching, Jeannie takes a small step back, and her eyes look away after the briefest contact. Seeing her reaction, her interlocutor looks in my direction for 4 long steps separating us. Jeannie's voice is uncertain. Dave, this is my new boss, whom I may have told you about, Clive. I don't really need to hear that name. I've already guessed who this bastard is, just by the smile that spreads across his face. It's a smug smile, a boastful smile, a not-so-subtle smile like, I used your wife. A rage the like of which I have never experienced before rises in me. I desperately want to punch him in the face, but I keep enough control not to do it. I'm thinking about doing nothing with a weak, well-groomed slug, but I can't help myself. No sooner had I taken him in my hand than I felt him trying to pull away. I won't let him. I turn our palms into the traditional vertical position and squeeze. I'm squeezing it. His hands are used to pressing knobs, tapping on elegant keyboards, and caressing other people's wives. Mine are calloused and strong, used to holding scissors and pacifying recalcitrant sheep. This is not a competition at all. I squeeze a little more. The last thing I see before my gaze shifts to my wife is the face of this vile bastard, from whom the blood has drained away. I can feel the bones in his hand grinding against each other. Jeannie hears a moan coming from his lips. A look of confusion appears on her face. She looks down at our joined hands, looks up at my face and understands. She understands that her secret has been revealed. He understands that there will be no forgiveness from me. He understands that we will not have the children we talked about recently. He understands that we are finished. Her hand goes to her throat. I'm just looking at her. I press down on a feminine hand. His left hand comes to the aid of his right wrist, grabbing, trying in vain to separate us. It only takes him a few seconds to realize that it's useless. He slowly kneels down, his moans getting louder. Nevertheless, I continue to increase the pressure. I can feel the growing enclave of silence emanating from our little painting. I don't even do the guy a favor. I don't look at him. I keep looking at Jeannie. She's clearly fighting the urge to run away. I think my gaze is what holds her in place. The kneeling man lets out a high-pitched scream, more like a little girl's squeal, when I feel something crunching in his paw. I'm increasing the pressure a little more. By this time, tears are streaming down his face. So does Jeannie. His expression is as far away from the malevolent smile with which he greeted me as it is possible for a human being to be. The room is almost silent now, except for our little circle of sobbing and screeching. Jeannie breaks eye contact, her gaze straying to the person who has just entered my peripheral vision. Mr. Higgins is next to her. I know who it is. He created the company my wife works for from scratch, and which she speaks of with reverence. As I stare at Jeannie, I feel rather than see Higgins looking down at the almost tearful, screaming man, his sales manager, than at my wife. Jeannie, on the other hand, looks anywhere but at me and the owner of the company. I feel a hand gently grabbing me. The voice that accompanies this sounds sympathetic. Okay, son, let him go. I'll figure it out for myself. With a final squeeze that causes a loud scream, I obey. My eyes take in the scene that everyone in the room is silently watching, understanding, mainly from the guilty expression on Jeannie's face, why a humiliated man suffered at my hand. Focusing on Mr. Higgins, I nod to him and, after taking one last look at my future ex-wife, turn around and leave, hearing at the same time. Nigel, call an ambulance for my former sales manager, please. Mrs. Brown, come with me. I think we need to discuss your resignation. I knew it was the moment of truth, the time of the fracture, the decisive moment of making a decision, the moment I've been dreading for weeks. Strangely enough, it was also a moment that thrilled me more than anything I had experienced before. It's a strange place to be, perhaps the most horny of all the places I've ever been. It's a pretty smelly bathroom in a rundown bar. Well, are you going to do it? It was my friend Lucy, and I knew that somehow her words signaled that I was at the time of the crime. Or escape. I really have to explain what's going on, what brought me to this point, don't you think? I've been happily married to a great guy for 8 years. He's worth me giving up my wild habits for him, and we have a fantastic marriage. The only thing that clouds our happiness is my inability to have children, but our marriage is satisfying in every way, no matter what. Then my old college friend, Lucy, came back to town and reminded me how simple life used to be. Simple and fun. She didn't let the fact that she was married stop her from having fun. It just slows me down, she kept saying. Whenever her hubby was out of town and he traveled a lot, she went to bars on the seedy outskirts. Let's just say she never had to buy her own drinks, and she was never alone. Her love stories against the wall, in some bushes, in the back seat of some guy's car in the parking lot, or at his house reawakened pleasant memories of the old days. Lucy's stories told of how she said a long and loving goodbye to her husband in the morning, and then that evening she was roasted on a spit by 2 bikers in a cheap motel. She's been putting this in my head for months. I started to think that I deserved what she had too. She had been doing this for years and had never been caught. How hard was it to keep it a secret? I tried to resist. I really resisted. I tried to encourage Dave to be more rude, more selfish when we were in bed so that I could close my eyes and pretend it was someone else. But Dave was just Dave, passionate but gentle. Then my husband announced that he was going on a rare week-long business trip of his own. Lucy telling me her stories all the time pretty much got me into a constant state of arousal, and the 5 days without love while Dave was gone made me boil. So when Lucy suggested that I take advantage of Dave's absence to join her on one of her expeditions, my hormones got the better of my common sense. I was kidding myself that I was just going to spend the evening with her, but who was I kidding? Being at the bar and having almost every guy buy me drinks set me free for serious dancing. Dancing, where I was needed, mauled, groped, fingered, and all the other seedy verbs you can think of. Lucy continued to ask, "Have you chosen anyone yet?" Whenever our paths crossed in a crowded bar. Finally, she cornered me and dragged me to the dirty bathroom of the bar, where we were sitting in adjacent booths. "This is a critical time, Sandy. I'm ready to make love. You either pick one or two of them and join me, or you take a taxi home." I think her reference to the two of them touched on one of my favorite fantasies. But not today. I scolded myself, all in good time, Sandra. Just one guy tonight. Okay, Lucy, how do I choose and what should I do? Blushing and leaving the booth, Lucy and I high-fived, and she quietly said to me, "Go, girl," before leading me back to the meat market. Gathering my courage, I took a step towards him. I used my left hand to grab his right and turn it to accept my gift. I wanted to make a show out of it. I was hoping he would smell them before taking me wherever he chooses and doing whatever he wants with me. Maybe I could get his number later and ask if he has a friend who could join us tomorrow night, the last night that Dave will be away. Even in the dim light, I saw his eyes light up when he realized what I had in my hands. His hand pulled away from mine to accept my gift, which I dropped into his palm. Suddenly, there was a big obstacle between us. Something else was thrown into the empty palm of my potential lover with the free left hand of an unknown person. I saw that it was a man's wedding ring, the gold glittering in the faint light. Instinctively, I took it, clutching it in my fist, and looked up. It was Dave, looking at me with an expression of resentment but determination on his face. Later, I thought about all the hurtful things he might have said right then. To call me a fool, a slut, publicly shame or humiliate me, all sorts of words. Anything would be better than what he actually said. A fair exchange, I think. Shaking his head, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me with an understanding of what he thought our marriage was worth. My mind has gone through the full gamut of emotions in the last 2 minutes, from disappointment to rage, and finally to determination. For the past couple of weeks, I have suspected that something is wrong with my wife, with whom I have lived for 14 years. She has gone from being open and honest to being secretive and can't meet my eyes. I did all the usual things that suspicious husbands do. I installed a GPS tracker on her phone, called her constantly during the working day, but nothing extraordinary happened. Still, doubts remain. Rachel doesn't work outside the house, and her car is always where it belongs. And if she really bullies me, then she either does it in our house or she gets picked up. Questioning at work with my workmates, which was ignored by the family court, made me realize that I would either have to come to terms with my wife's misconduct or become a part-time father. None of the options are acceptable to me. Watching Rachel closely for several weeks showed me a pattern. A freshly washed wife and no eye contact on Wednesdays and Fridays, except for the week when she had painters. It's Friday, and I'm coming home 3 hours earlier than usual. I stopped on the street 2 doors away from my house and did not open the garage door as usual. I silently look into the garage to check if an unfamiliar car is parked in my place. It's not there, then quietly open the front door. I suspected it would be bad, but I had no idea exactly how bad. The sounds of grunts, groans, and creaking of the bed springs tell me everything I need to know. Despite all my plans, I had no idea how I was going to react. Disappointment is the best way to describe how I feel. Wait a minute while I collect my thoughts. I'll recognize him. From time to time, he appeared on the social pages of the local newspaper. He is married to the daughter of Andrew Falcone, an allegedly law-abiding local businessman, but almost everyone knows that Falcone made his fortune in an irregular, Sicilian way. Even in $5,000 suits, the inner bandit shines through. There are still rumors about the disappearance of several business competitors when he first began to accumulate his fortune, and the hasty relocation of rivals of some of his friends to different states. A plan forms in my head and I decide, while the soul-destroying sounds from my bedroom only strengthen my resolve, not distract me from it. Back in the living room, I quickly look through the local business directory and write down the number of Falcone imports and exports. Nodding inwardly, I quietly walk back out the front door and walk 50 meters to the street corner. Turning my phone back into camera mode, I zoom in on the sign with the name of our street before leisurely approaching our house, making sure that the facade of my house with the number attached to the fence is clearly visible. I continue up the path and enter the front door. When I stop recording, I attach a clip to the text for Falcone with a few simple words, "Walk with me." I look at the screen, mentally counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until I get to the number 14. 14 seconds, one for each year of my marriage, then I click send. A second life-changing recording immediately followed. There is no pause on this. I drive off quietly and head to school to pick up the kids. Sometimes I take them with me to play somewhere before going home to dinner. Tonight, I suspect it's going to be a playground, dinner at the Hungry Jack's, and then a screening of this week's longest-running children's movie. Hopefully, they'll be exhausted enough to fall asleep in the car. Who knows what I'll find when I get home? At that moment, the hipster's phone rang, and he pulled it out of his belt bag with a flourish. No doubt hoping that everyone within reach will realize that this is the latest and greatest iPhone model, so excellent and so much more expensive than everyone else in the neighborhood. I was waiting for the inevitable, something a jerk like that just had to do. Not for this guy, a muffled conversation with a phone by his ear. Oh no. One button to answer the call, the second to turn on the speakerphone, and everyone who is within spitting distance, tempting or what, can hear both sides of the conversation. Hello, doll face. Hey, stud. What are you up to? Oh, I'm just getting ready for dinner. This last one was followed by a half scream, half squeal from the phone speaker. Justin, how many times do I have to tell you to shut the hell up about my husband? He's just great in bed, and I'm not going to let you defame him like that, okay? Damn. Lovely words from a woman who just spent half a day making love to another guy. Don't fuck with me. I'm sorry, Justin. I really care about Daryl. You know that. He can't help himself if he gets tired after working so much overtime. The guy looked around, beaming, obviously hoping that everyone had heard it. I'd rather not hear it. The conversation was disgusting. Guys like this should be castrated. Unfortunately, the conversation did not end there. He was nothing but predictable. I pretended to check the message on my phone. Are you sure you can't get away from hubby for a couple of hours this evening, and we can finish what we started earlier? Tempting. Big guy. It's going to take me a couple of days to get over it. Besides, Daryl will be home soon. He called 10 minutes ago to say he would pick up burgers on the way home. At that moment, I reached over my lover's shoulder and grabbed his phone. Bringing it to my mouth, I growled. That's right, Veronica. About your burger. What do you want, a quarter pound? Or a Big Mac? The only sound from the speaker was a high-pitched scream and the sound of the phone hitting the floor. I entered the personal space of an ordinary trendsetter with an expression of anger on my face. He had to awkwardly tilt his head back to look up at me. His face turned into a mask of horror. I was almost a foot taller. I do not know where all his blood went, but it definitely drained from his face. He saw the biceps on my arm and my huge, calloused palms, the result of many years of good, private physical labor. What can I say? Some things break more easily than others. End.